Hello, and thanks for watching At the Forefront, Fintech Conversations. I'm CJ Lengua, Vice President of Account Management at Forefront, and today it is my pleasure to be with Eric Soderberg, co-founder and co-managing partner of Forefront. Eric, thanks for your time today.
Glad to be here, CJ.
Awesome. So in today's episode, we'll be exploring some of the advice that Forefront put forward in a recent blog post, 8 tips for managing marketing during an economic downturn. We'll include a link with this video for those who'd like to read more, but stick around to the end for some additional exclusive color from our seasoned team of marketers and a few out-of-the-box ideas that you can start putting into play. So, Eric, I think it's safe to say you've been around the block a couple of times. Can you tell us how it is you've come to know about marketing during a downturn?
That's right. Well, thanks again for having me, CJ. Yeah, I think my career is long enough that I've experienced a downturn or two. But I would also offer that when we talk about like tips and tricks for trying to save money in marketing programs, look, it doesn't have to be an economic downturn. You could be a small startup on a really tight budget. You could be a huge firm on a tight budget. So I think these do apply in a lot of different scenarios. But yeah, I'm looking forward to talking about and sharing some of the tips and tricks that we have.
Awesome. Yeah, so let's dive right in. So one area that our blog post highlights is events. That's an area where marketers can potentially gain some efficiencies. That's certainly a domain that's seen a lot of change over the last 10 plus years, and absolutely just in the last couple of years since the beginning of the pandemic. So Eric, what are some of Forefront's top tips for event marketing, whether it's during an economic downturn or, as you said, anytime?
This is probably worthy of its own show, because I think we could go on for an hour and a half talking about trade show tips and tricks.
Let's add it to the list.
Yeah, I would offer, though, that before we even start talking about a few of the money saving sort of things, I think like big picture, when you start to think about an event program, you have to have a plan for that program, right? So you need to decide, what are you even going to be going to these events for? Is it for awareness? Is it for lead gen? That can inform a lot about your strategy. It can inform a lot about the events that you pick. Regardless of your strategy, however, one big thing that you got to do is, if you can, is commit to these shows early. And this is hard. Everyone wants to hold off and think, well, geez, is there a better event coming that I want to go to or not? You need to decide early, so they can get your name and your logo in the program and all the materials that go out from these event organizers, which are unbelievably, like, they're limitless, right? The amount of promotion. So commit early, get in early. That is a huge thing. Now, for money saving tips, first off, don't be afraid to ask for stuff. Can I get an extra ticket?
Absolutely.
Right? Can I move my booth a little further over there? Is it definitely blocked? Is it not blocked? Do a little negotiation. I think conference organizers in this space are happy to have those conversations. Very easy one. Ship your materials early. I know that sounds obvious, but I can almost guarantee most people listening to this program, they work in marketing department or sales department, they're overnighting them the last day. It's what always happens, and it's cost triple the price. Do not do that.
Yeah.
Another thing, I'm going to save one good one for the end, but another thing is, you go to bigger shows, a lot of times they'll say, oh, there's a labor fee to set your booth up. Don't accept that to be a fact every time. Make sure you see the paperwork. Make sure you read the details, because oftentimes, if you can assemble your booth, I forget, it depends a little bit on the event space, but with one tool in less than 2 hours, an individual can do it themselves, and you don't have to pay somebody. So make sure you look at those rules on that. So again, we'll save another event tip for the land, but that's all.
For sure. Yeah. And specifically regarding asking for extra things and negotiating, I think one thing that marketers ought to keep in mind is, you might sign a contract 6 months in advance. You can still go back a month before the event and ask for another ticket. They might be happy to give it at that point in time, discounted heavily or even for free. So lots of opportunities there for sure. There's some really good advice there. Another tip that we shared in the blog post talks about engaging with partners, doing some partner marketing, and that could be through events, potentially doing joint events, sharing some of the costs there. But it's part of a bigger story around partner marketing in general. So we'd love to hear some of your experience, whether it's going to industry conference organizers, sort of locking arms with a friendly firm, or even doing some other partner marketing initiatives.
That is true. I mean, if you think about it at a really basic level or very high level.
Mhm.
Doing things with a partner is like a pretty easy way to like double your audience exposure. And
Mhm.
in some cases, I cut the price in half. So why don't you do this like more often?
Yeah.
So if you think about things like doing a webinar, why not have a partner join you? You're going to be advertising this webinar. They will be advertising it with their emails, with their social, with their newsletters. Even if people don't come in droves, you've got way more exposure through both those channels. So should
Absolutely.
always consider those sorts of things. When it comes to trying to save money, look, in-person events, renting a space at a local restaurant or bar, doing that with a partner, same effect. They've got their invite list, they're prospects of yours and theirs, and vice versa. And you can cut the price of that event in half. Double the people, half the price. Super easy thing to remember. And you mentioned trade shows, CJ. I would say if you're considering sponsoring dually and having a breakout session together, I think all the things that I just discussed apply.
Hmm.
The one place I'd probably stop short of is the shared booth,
Hmm.
because that ends up being complicated.
Yeah.
Whose booth? It's unlikely you can each have a booth. And then it's almost like it's you are if say it was if it was your company's booth, yet you had your partner with you and they approach and they're expecting to hear about your company. Now they're hearing about something different.
Yeah.
It's not set up. It's too loose.
Mhm.
That could be problematic. So all these things are great. That's the one area where I've seen it become problematic. So I'd stop short at joint booth purchasing.
I think I'd agree with you on that one. You might even have to prepare like a one-off a booth for that, and then you
Yeah,
start to
yeah,
kind of chip
it's
away
too
at
much.
the economic efficiencies that we're trying to talk about here.
The partner's not going to want to see the other material you have at your booth from your other partners,
Yeah,
right? It gets tricky. So
yeah, I can see that for sure, for sure.
yeah,
Let's shift gears a little bit. Let's we've been talking about some of these sort of in-person experiential type initiatives, working with partners. Let's talk about data. So a couple
uh,
tips in our
mhm.
blog post present ideas on how to use data to inform decisions. And that's always a best practice. Soft
100%.
market, boom times, doesn't matter. You need to be
That's
using
right.
data, but especially when every dollar that goes out the door is under the microscope.
Yeah,
So what we're telling readers to do is, use data to guide those spending and even other resource allocation
yeah, yeah.
decisions, and to take a close look at ad spend, for example. So, Eric, we'd love for you to unpack these for us a little bit.
Yeah, you know what? How much is there to unpack, really? Like, if you think about it, it's like you should always be doing this, right? But when money is tight, you got to take this seriously.
Yeah,
You should think about this in good times and bad. Certainly when you're planning a year, just make sure you're going to be paying attention to measuring all the stuff that you do to the extent possible. One obvious thing is I think many firms out there may have Google ads set up,
mhm,
LinkedIn ads set up, and it's almost like a set it and forget it sort of thing. Remind yourself
can be.
to check in on these programs. Just remind yourself that they're actually ongoing.
For sure.
So that's a should be a no-brainer. Although we've seen times where people say, "Oh yeah, I forgot I was doing the Google ad stuff." Yeah. But measure everything. And when you think about like everything from like emails, which are free, right? It doesn't really cost you much to send out emails. How are those performing? I spent a lot of money on have someone else write a white paper for me. Should I do that again? Well, how did it perform last time? I
Mhm.
mean, every one of these activities you really want to know, because when times are tough, you want to be able to make the right decisions and spend the money when you should, and don't spend it when you should, for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah, it sounds like a sort of a combination of best practices on an ongoing basis, but also contingency planning. I think over a long enough career, we all see downturns. There's another one coming.
Yeah.
It might surprise you when it happens, but it shouldn't surprise you that it happens.
That's
Uh,
right, and I think
yeah.
and I'd say to that it's sort of measurement stuff, but webinars, right?
Mhm.
Um, Inexpensive, if not zero, to
Yeah.
do those. Yes, you'll have to come up with some emails to promote and some LinkedIn posts, but these are typically free. And webinars, they're a good source of raising awareness, visibility, lead generation as well. So that's a program that's pretty tried and true, I think, in good times and bad, but particularly when you're on a budget, that's a good program.
Absolutely. Webinars it's one of those it's kind of almost like what we're doing here, right? We're offering a little bit of free value to engage,
Yeah,
and maybe it'll lead to some conversations, right?
that's right. Exactly. Exactly.
So, this has been a great conversation so far, illuminating and yet grounded, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Why don't we have a little fun? I
Yeah.
think we've all been waiting to hear some out of the box ideas from a marketer who's seen it all.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, what are some new and novel tactics that marketers might be able to consider?
Yeah. So I got one I think is a good one.
Mhm.
But I would say generally speaking, I've had over the years when I was before Forefront in-house, we used to have like contests where who can
Mm,
come up with the best money saving ideas for
sure.
all sorts of things. Marketing being one of them. How can we get clever and not break the bank? So I would always encourage people to do that. A couple ones that I don't know if people think about enough. One is bartering.
Mm,
I'll go back to the trade shows and the conferences again, where these tickets sometimes aren't cheap, right? $1,500, $2,000, $2,500.
yeah.
And it might just so happen that you have a newsletter that you send out to 5,000 people once a week. Maybe it's a morning note that you send out because you're a brokerage firm. Why not offer to the event organizer, hey, I'll run some ads for you in exchange for a ticket? Doesn't
Mm,
cost a penny, could save you $2,500. Think about the bars you can offer with your digital properties, newsletters, website, blogs, podcasts, you
mm.
name it. Definitely look for those channels that you have where you can offer them to others in return for things that you might want. So that's one. But I must say, my favorite one is this one. I think the principle still holds. We always wanted to have demos at our booths back in the day. And of course, that was going to require a monitor.
Mm,
Well, it used to be a TV or
mhm.
monitor, a big one. The bigger, the better. And in order to do that, you had to spend back in the day. I don't want to date myself too much. There were lots of money. And then you had to buy a case, a protective case. And these were another $1,000 for a case. And then you had to ship these things, a few
Mhm.
hundred down, a few hundred back. So here's the tip. Buy one of these TVs on site, raffle it off at your booth as a nice giveaway.
Mhm.
Thing is going to cost you $200. There's no shipping, there's no box needed, and you have a nice giveaway for the event.
I love
So
it.
that would be my favorite tip of all.
I
Buy
love it.
your monitors on site and raffle them off.
I
And you get a happy prospect out of it.
absolutely. Yeah,
Save the box.
I've seen some of these rate cards to rent a TV for 3 days at a
Oh,
conference. It can cost twice as much as just buying it. I mean,
buy one.
it just makes a
Buy
ton of
one if
sense.
you can. If you can. It gets tough when you're in these out of the way places, but you're in a
Yeah,
major city. There's going to be a Best Buy around the corner. Buy yourself a TV.
absolutely, absolutely. Or
Yeah.
honestly, nowadays Amazon Prime, you could probably order one on Amazon, ship it to your hotel.
Ship for free. Yes, you can.
Still cheaper than renting from the conference.
Exactly.
Man, it's too funny. Eric, no, this has been fantastic. Thank you so much for your time, for your
My
invaluable
pleasure.
insights. Yeah, no, and thank you to all of our viewers and listeners for tuning in. Just to quickly recap before we break. So, today's episode, we talked about maximizing ROI on events. We talked about sharing costs and resources with partners to efficiently expand the reach of your efforts. Talked about using data to inform decisions. And we even stepped outside the box a bit and had a little bit of fun. So for more insights on managing marketing during a downturn and countless other topics, we invite you to head over to forefrontcoms.com. That's comms with 2 M's. Click over to our news and insights section to learn more, including a tip or two that maybe didn't make it into the podcast, but you'll find in the blog post associated with this. We've also got a fantastic catalog of episodes of this podcast at the forefront, now over 24, including special appearances by industry thought leaders putting this advice into practice day in and day out. Finally, if you'd like to learn about how Forefront has helped clients in all climates, Forefront's been in business now through downturns, through the pandemic, through boom times. You can check out our case studies on our website as well. Again, Eric Soderberg, co-founder, co-managing partner of Forefront, CJ Lengua, VP of Account Management. Thanks everyone for your time today, and we hope to see you again soon.